Welcome back. On the previous episode of Proclaim, we talked about the first step, the first practical step in creating that Zionic condition, or in other words, the life of Christ in us, and that was not to dominate or control others or even the church. So now, on this episode, we're going to talk about the second step, and that is empathy. The glory of the Lord. Have you ever experienced some type of, traumatic event? Someone did something to you or whatever, and you were just feeling very emotional, you were feeling hurt, and you really wanted to confide in somebody. And so you found, a friend, a spouse, parent, whoever, and you go and you share with them your feelings and you try to express it to them, and they're, they're not getting it, or they're shutting you down, they're invalidating you, they're asking all these questions like, are you really sure you know what you shouldn't feel that way, those sort of things. If you've ever experienced that, I know I have, and it's quite painful. And what we need in that moment, what we're looking for, is empathy. And empathy is something that Jesus did all the time. And it's something that I'm really not good at, even though I've experienced the other end of it and I know how much it hurts. I'm not always the best at giving it to other people, because empathy really is a spiritual discipline. And so let's define real quick what exactly we mean by empathy. Basically, empathy is the ability to enter into someone's emotions and to offer understanding, to get where they are right now, and not just where they are right now, but also where they've come from. So what's their background? What's the things they've experienced, their upbringing, the trauma that they've had in their life? Because oftentimes, whatever is going on in this moment right here is really not related necessarily to this, but to something that happened a long, long time ago. And if you aren't able to have empathy, you won't see that. All you'll see is what's taking place right in front of you. And sometimes our response to that is not very loving or kind. And so let's talk also about a couple things that empathy isn't. So empathy does not require agreement. It requires understanding, and there is a difference. The second thing, empathy does not require that you endorse someone's beliefs. It just requires that you validate their feelings. Because, again, as we just discussed, if you have ever experienced someone dismissing you or stonewalling you, there is nothing more frustrating and painful than that, to just be shut down in that manner. Oftentimes we can't see other people's intentions and we can't see their thoughts. All we see are the things that they say and that they do. And so in order to really have empathy, we need to go deeper. We need to have humility, the humility to ask deeper questions, to try and understand where someone is coming from and where they're going. And even in whatever discussion you're having, and as you're listening to them, and hopefully you're actually actively listening, sometimes we get these interpretations, these conclusions in our mind, and we think that that is it and that's final. But is it really? Especially when something is happening to us, someone is doing something to us. In fact, I just had a coworker come to me just recently about something that took place. They had recently moved positions and they felt like their previous department was slighting them, and they felt so hurt. And yet they also were trying to come to this conclusion that, maybe I don't see everything, and maybe they didn't deliberately try to hurt me, even though that's kind of what I want to feel right now. She had to have the humility to understand that what she was seeing, perhaps, maybe she was wrong. And there is a fantastic example of this in the scriptures, and it is Moroni and Paharan. And so just to fill in some of the background, the Nephites have been at war for on and off basically for decades. And not just a war in some foreign land, a war in their own land. People had been not just killed in battle, but civilians, they're dying from famine and pestilence and disease. It's a horrible time. There is so much pain going on. And Moroni is in the front lines. He's in the thick of all of it. And he is investing everything. In fact, he doesn't really live that much longer after the war finally ends because he dedicated so much of himself. And they have reached this point in the war where he was feeling like there's no way they're going to win. And then all of a sudden he hears about Helaman and his 2,000 and how they've been winning in their theater of the war. And now he has hope. He says, I know we can win this war if we just do these things. And he lays out a strategy, and he realizes in order to complete this strategy, he needs men, he needs supplies. And so he writes to the government. He writes to Paharan, who is the chief governor of the land. And he asks for these things. And he doesn't get them. He doesn't even hear a response. And so his reaction, and it makes sense, is one of extreme anger. And he writes a letter, which is Alma 27, and it's pretty intense. I mean, if I were to summarize it in my own words, he's basically telling Paharan, the reason why all these people are dying is because of you. And if you don't give me men and supplies, I'm going to come and kill you and take it. That's basically what he's saying. And, while it's justifiable, was his conclusion correct? No, it wasn't. And so we're not trying to excuse everything, but empathy helps you to understand where Moroni is coming from. And Paharan writes this response in chapter 28, and he says in verse 11 that, even though you've censured me, you've said all these harsh things about me, it doesn't matter because I rejoice in the greatness of your heart. It's like, whoa, what a statement. He is able to validate Moroni's feelings, even though he disagrees with his conclusions, in this one simple sentence. And what that must have done for Moroni, for when he reads this letter of Paharan, his heart is filled with joy again. And I don't know about you, but if I were in Paharan's spot, I probably wouldn't have responded in that way. I would have got defensive. I would have got angry. I would have tried to defend myself and put the blame on Moroni or on other people. He doesn't even do that. He just rejoices in the greatness of Moroni's heart. And so can we do that in our own life? And especially as we interact with people in the church. As it says in Proverbs 15:1, a soft answer turns away wrath. Paharan was able to diffuse that situation because of empathy. And here's the thing to remember. If you take nothing from this talk, just remember this. When people are in some sort of conflict or they're feeling pain or whatever, they're in the emotional part of their brain. They're in their brainstem or their limbic brain or both, which controls our emotions and our instincts, which means they can't think logically. When I'm feeling that way, I cannot think logically. And what happens usually in a situation like that? The other person tries to come in and throw in some logic. They try to use facts and figures and scriptures, and you're never going to reach that person. Not ever. I'm not saying those things are wrong necessarily, but you won't reach them. You have to be able to acquire this ability to step into their emotion briefly in order to be able to pull them out. If you immediately come in with logic and say, that's an irrational feeling, you shouldn't feel that way, or whatever it happens to be, or hey, well, have you considered this? Don't do that. And so in closing, if we can learn to say things like, I understand, that must have hurt. I see you, I get you, I got you. Those simple words have the ability to build Zion more than any argument ever could.